In the heart of Lahore, where narrow alleys twist and turn like ancient stories, lived a woman named Saima. Her world was a small one, confined within the sun-baked brick walls of a modest home. The air here was always thick with the scent of spices and the distant hum of city life. Saima's days were a testament to quiet, relentless hard work. From the first light of dawn until the stars claimed the night sky, she was a whirlwind of activity. The rhythmic sound of her sewing machine was the constant, unwavering heartbeat of her existence. It was a sound of survival, a sound of labor, but most importantly, it was the sound of a dream being stitched together, one thread at a time. Her hands, though often tired and calloused, moved with a grace that spoke of years of practice. She poured her soul into every piece of fabric she touched, transforming simple cloth into beautiful garments. Each stitch was a prayer, each pattern a hope for a better tomorrow. Life in these alleys was not easy. It demanded resilience and a spirit that refused to be broken by the daily struggles. Saima possessed this spirit in abundance. She faced every challenge with a quiet dignity, her resolve as strong as the oldest walls in her neighborhood. She was a mother, a provider, and a dreamer, all woven into one remarkable woman. The world outside her small workshop was a cacophony of sounds and sights, but inside, there was a focused calm. This was her sanctuary, her battlefield, and her place of worship. Here, she wasn't just earning a living, she was crafting a future. The money she earned was not for grand luxuries or personal comforts. Every rupee was carefully saved, set aside for a purpose far greater than herself. It was for her daughter, Zara. Saima's own dreams had long been shelved, replaced by a singular, powerful ambition: to give Zara the life she herself could only imagine, a life of education, opportunity, and freedom from the hardships she knew so well. This alley, with its vibrant chaos and its hidden struggles, was the backdrop to Saima's silent promise. It was a promise made to her child, a vow whispered into the hum of her sewing machine. The community around her, a tapestry of families living intertwined lives, saw her toil. They saw the light in her workshop burn late into the night. They knew of her unwavering dedication. Saima was a familiar, respected figure, a symbol of a mother's unyielding love. Her journey was a quiet one, but its destination was a bright and shining future. A future she was determined to build with her own two hands, no matter the cost. Zara was the sun around which Saima's entire universe revolved. She was a bright, curious girl with eyes that held the sparkle of 1,000 questions. Her laughter was the sweetest melody in their small home, a sound that could wash away the deepest fatigue from Saima's weary shoulders. Zara was more than just a daughter, she was the living, breathing embodiment of all of Saima's hopes. In Zara's potential, Saima saw the redemption of her own unfulfilled aspirations. She saw a future where a woman's worth was measured not by her limitations, but by the scale of her ambitions. Zara was her reason, her motivation, her everything. Every day, as Saima worked, Zara would sit beside her, engrossed in her school books. The sight filled Saima's heart with an indescribable pride. She watched her daughter trace letters and solve problems, and she knew that every drop of her sweat was worth it. Saima dreamed of a day when Zara would walk the halls of a prestigious university, her mind sharp and her future bright. She didn't want Zara's world to be confined to the same narrow alleys. She wanted her to see the world, to learn, to grow, and to become a woman of substance and independence. This dream was her guiding star, the light that kept her going through the darkest of nights. The bond between mother and daughter was profound, forged in shared struggles and unconditional love. They were a team. Saima provided the means, and Zara provided the inspiration. In the evenings, after the sewing machine fell silent, they would talk. Saima would listen to Zara's stories about school, her friends, and her dreams of becoming a doctor. These conversations were precious moments that fueled Saima's resolve. She would tell Zara stories of strong women, of courage and perseverance, planting seeds of strength in her young daughter's heart. She was not just raising a daughter, she was nurturing a future leader, a compassionate human being. Every rupee Saima saved was a brick in the foundation of Zara's future. The small tin box where she kept her savings was more sacred than any treasure chest. It held not just money, but the culmination of countless hours of labor, of skipped meals, and of deferred needs. It held the fees for a good school, the promise of university tuition, and the key to a life of dignity and choice for her beloved Zara. This was not just a financial goal. It was an emotional pilgrimage. It was a mother's sacred mission to ensure her daughter would have the wings to fly, far beyond the confines of their humble existence. One day, a message appeared on Saima's simple phone. It was an offer that seemed too good to be true, a digital mirage in the desert of her daily struggle. The message promised a government grant, a special fund designed to help artisans and small business owners like her. It spoke of doubling her savings, a shortcut to securing Zara's future. For a woman who counted every rupee, the offer was intoxicating. The process seemed simple and official. All she had to do was transfer her savings to a specified account to verify her eligibility, and the grant, along with her original amount, would be returned manifold. Doubt wrestled with hope in her mind. The dream for Zara was so powerful, so immediate, that it clouded her judgment. The desire to fast-track her daughter's future, to lift the heavy burden of financial uncertainty from her shoulders, was overwhelming. She thought of the years of work still ahead, the potential for illness, the fragility of her small enterprise. This grant felt like a blessing, an answer to her silent prayers. With trembling hands and a heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement, she followed the instructions. She went to the local money transfer agent and sent her entire life savings, the contents of the sacred tin box, to the account number provided in the message. The moments that followed were filled with anxious anticipation. She waited for a confirmation message, for the promised return that would change their lives forever. But the message never came. Instead, a chilling silence descended. The phone number she had been communicating with was suddenly unreachable. The website mentioned in the message vanished into thin air. A cold, sickening dread began to creep into Saima's heart, replacing the warmth of hope. The digital promise had dissolved, leaving behind a terrifying emptiness. The realization crashed down upon her with the force of a physical blow. She had been deceived. The money was gone, every rupee, every hour of lost sleep, every sacrifice she had ever made, all of it had vanished into a digital abyss. The savings were not just money, they were Zara's future. They were the university fees, the books, the promise of a better life. The financial loss was devastating, but the emotional toll was far worse. She felt a profound sense of shame, of foolishness, of having failed as a mother. How could she have been so naive? The dream she had so carefully stitched together over years of painstaking labor had been unraveled in a single catastrophic moment of digital betrayal. The silence in her small home that night was deafening. In the days that followed the fraud, a heavy cloak of despair settled over Saima's home. The rhythmic hum of the sewing machine, once the sound of hope, fell silent. Saima moved through her days like a ghost, her face a mask of hollowed-out grief. The vibrant energy that had once defined her was gone, replaced by a crushing weight of shame and helplessness. She couldn't bring herself to look at Zara, whose innocent eyes still held the bright promise of a future that Saima now felt she had stolen. The guilt was a physical pain, a constant ache in her chest that made it difficult to breathe, to think, to exist. She retreated into herself, building a wall of silence around her sorrow. Friends and neighbors who knocked on her door were met with excuses or unanswered silence. She felt exposed, foolish, and deeply ashamed. In a community where everyone knew each other's business, the thought of admitting her mistake was unbearable. She imagined their whispers, their pity, their judgment. The fraud had not just stolen her money. It had stolen her dignity, her confidence, and her place within the community she had always known. The world she had so carefully constructed had crumbled around her, leaving her isolated in the ruins. Zara, perceptive and sensitive, felt the shift in the atmosphere. She saw the unshed tears in her mother's eyes and felt the cold silence that had replaced their warm evening chats. She tried to reach out to ask what was wrong, but Saima would just shake her head and turn away, unable to voice the magnitude of her failure. The disconnect between them grew, a painful chasm opened by a secret Saima was too broken to share. The dream of Zara's future now seemed like a cruel joke, a taunt that echoed in the silence of her idle sewing machine. Hope was a distant memory, a foreign concept in her new reality of loss. For weeks, Saima was trapped in this dark place. She lost her appetite, her sleep punctuated by nightmares. The future she had worked so hard to build now seemed like an insurmountable mountain. Every path forward looked blocked, every option impossible. The cybercriminals had taken more than her savings. They had taken her spirit. They had targeted her most vulnerable point, her love for her daughter, and used it to break her. In the quiet darkness of her room, Saima felt utterly defeated, a solitary figure drowning in a sea of silent despair, with no land in sight. One evening, as Saima sat in the dark, just staring at the covered sewing machine, she saw Zara's reflection in the window. Her daughter was trying to study by the dim light of a candle, her brow furrowed in concentration. In that moment, something inside Saima shifted. She saw not just her daughter, but the unwavering dream that Zara represented. Was she going to let a faceless criminal extinguish that light? Was she going to let this act of cruelty define their lives? A tiny defiant spark ignited in the depths of her despair. It was the spark of a mother's love, a force more powerful than any shame or sorrow. That night, Saima made a decision. She would not remain a silent victim. Her silence was the fraudster's victory, and she refused to grant them that satisfaction. She knew she was not a technologically savvy person, but she had a voice. She had a story. The next day, with a resolve she hadn't felt in weeks, she borrowed a neighbor's smartphone. Her hands trembled as she opened a social media app. She didn't know much about hashtags or viral posts, but she knew how to tell the truth. With simple, heartfelt words, she began to type. She wrote about her dream for Zara, her years of hard work, and the cruel betrayal that had shattered her world. She didn't write with anger, but with a raw, painful honesty. She described the feeling of her life's savings vanishing in an instant. She spoke not as a statistic, but as a mother whose heart had been broken. She ended her post with a simple plea, not for money, but for awareness. She warned other mothers, other hardworking people, to be wary of such scams. She wanted her painful experience to serve as a shield for others. She hit the post button, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and liberation. She had broken her silence. She had taken the first step out of the darkness. She had no idea what to expect. Perhaps her post would be lost in the vast ocean of the internet. Perhaps no one would even read it, but it didn't matter. The act of speaking out was a victory in itself. It was an act of reclaiming her narrative, of transforming her shame into a tool for change. She had turned her vulnerability into a weapon against the very people who had preyed on it. That single post, born from a moment of profound despair and maternal love, was a declaration of war. Saima was no longer just a victim. She was a warrior, ready to fight back. The response to Saima's social media post was, well, slow at first. A handful of comments of sympathy from friends and neighbors who had finally learned of her plight. But then, something truly incredible began to happen. Her story, told in such a raw and honest way, really resonated with people. It was shared by one person, then 10, then 100. Her posts started to travel far beyond her small Lahore alley, reaching people all across the city and then the entire country. The story of a hard-working mother deceived by faceless criminals struck a deep chord. People saw their own mothers, sisters, and neighbors in Saima. They felt her pain and were genuinely moved by her courage. The first wave of support came from her own community. The same neighbors she had once hidden from now came to her door, not with pity, but with a sense of solidarity. One brought a warm meal, another offered to help with errands. The local shopkeeper told her to take whatever groceries she needed on credit. They didn't offer grand solutions, but their small acts of kindness began to mend the fabric of her shattered dignity. They saw her not as a fool, but as a brave woman who had dared to speak out. Her courage had transformed their perception, and their support started to rebuild the trust she had lost. Soon, local activists and journalists picked up the story. Saima's small home became a hub of activity. Reporters arrived to hear her account firsthand, broadcasting her warning to a much wider audience. A local NGO that specialized in women's empowerment reached out. They offered her free legal counsel to pursue a case with the authorities and provided trauma counseling to help her process the emotional devastation. They validated her experience, assuring her that she was not to blame, that she was the victim of a sophisticated crime that preyed on the trusting and the hopeful. The support was overwhelming. Saima, who had felt so alone in her despair, was now surrounded by a network of care. The silence in her home was replaced by the buzz of conversation, of planning, of hope. The community's embrace was a powerful antidote to the shame that had poisoned her spirit. It taught her a profound lesson, that vulnerability, when shared, does not lead to judgment but to connection. Her single voice had created a ripple that was now turning into a wave of collective action and compassion, proving that a community united is a formidable force against any injustice. As Saima's story spread across national news outlets and social media platforms in Pakistan, it soon crossed international borders. A Pakistani expatriate living in Canada stumbled upon a news article about her. He was deeply moved by her resilience and the love she held for her daughter. He saw in Saima the same spirit of hard work and sacrifice he had seen in his own mother. He felt compelled to act. He started a small, verified online fundraising campaign, sharing Saima's story with his network of friends and colleagues abroad. He set a modest goal, hoping to recover a portion of what she had lost. The response was, honestly, astonishing. The global Pakistani diaspora, connected by shared roots and a common culture, rallied to Saima's cause. Donations began to pour in from the United Kingdom, the United States, the UAE, and Australia. People who had never met Saima, who lived thousands of miles away, were contributing to help rebuild her dream for Zara. They left messages of support, praising her courage and wishing her strength. The internet, the very tool that had been used to deceive her, was now becoming her greatest source of salvation. It was a powerful testament to the compassion that transcends geography. Back in Lahore, the NGO helping Saima worked with the Federal Investigation Agency's cybercrime wing. Armed with the details from Saima's case and bolstered by the public outcry, the authorities launched a serious investigation. Her story had become a high-profile case, shedding light on the plight of countless other silent victims. The international attention put pressure on the system to act decisively. Saima's personal battle had sparked a larger conversation about the need for better digital literacy and stronger protections against online fraud, especially for the most vulnerable segments of the population. The fundraising campaign not only met its initial goal, but far exceeded it. The outpouring of support was more than just financial. It was a global embrace that restored Saima's faith in humanity. To know that strangers from across the world cared about her and her daughter's future was a deeply healing experience. It showed her that goodness existed in abundance, often in the most unexpected places. The digital world was not just a place of danger. It was also a global village capable of immense kindness, a village that had come together to support one of its own. The day the funds from the global campaign were transferred to her was, honestly, a day of rebirth for Saima. As she looked at her bank balance, tears streamed down her face. But these were not tears of sorrow or shame. They were tears of overwhelming gratitude and relief. The amount was more than what she had lost. It was enough to secure Zara's education through university and even provide a small cushion to restart and expand her own sewing business. The dream that had been so violently shattered was not just restored, it was now bigger and more secure than she had ever dared to imagine. With newfound confidence, Saima uncovered her sewing machine. The familiar hum soon filled the small room once again, but this time it sounded different. It was no longer just the sound of survival, it was a song of victory, of resilience, of a future reclaimed. She invested in a new machine and better quality fabrics, her creativity unleashed. Her business began to thrive as orders poured in, not just from her neighborhood, but from people across the city who had heard her story. She was no longer just a tailor, she was a symbol of hope, and people wanted to support her journey. A few months later, there was more good news. The FIA, following a complex trail of digital footprints, managed to track down and arrest the criminals behind the fraud ring. They had cheated numerous other people, but Saima's courage in speaking out had been the catalyst for their downfall. The news brought a sense of justice and closure. Her fight had not only recovered her own losses, but had also protected countless others from suffering the same fate. She had faced the monster in the dark, and with the help of her community, she had won. Holding Zara's hand, Saima walked her to the gates of one of Lahore's best schools, a place she could now afford. Watching her daughter walk in, her backpack filled with new books and her face beaming with excitement, was the ultimate victory. This was the moment she had worked for, cried for, and fought for. The path had been treacherous, marked by a devastating betrayal, but it had led them here. Saima had learned that the darkest night could indeed lead to the brightest dawn, and that a mother's love, when turned into action, was an unstoppable force. Saima's story did not end with her personal victory. She realized that her experience had given her a new purpose. She could not go back to being the quiet woman in the alley. She had found her voice, and she was determined to use it. In collaboration with the NGO that had helped her, Saima started visiting other communities, sharing her story with other women. She spoke in simple, relatable terms about the dangers of cyber fraud, teaching them how to recognize scams and protect their hard-earned money. She turned her pain into a powerful educational tool, becoming a grassroots ambassador for digital literacy. She became a pillar of strength in her own community and beyond. Women who had been silent victims of similar frauds, emboldened by her courage, began to come forward and seek help. Saima became their guide and their confidant, offering them the same empathy and support she had received. She helped establish a small support group where women could share their experiences without shame and learn from one another. Her small home, once a place of despair, transformed into a sanctuary of empowerment, a place where broken spirits could come to heal and find strength in solidarity. Saima's legacy was not just in the secure future she had built for Zara, but in the ripple of change she had created in her society. Her story became a powerful lesson taught in community centers and even discussed in policy circles. It highlighted the urgent need for systemic change, for banks to create simpler and more secure processes, for telecom companies to be more vigilant, and for the government to run widespread awareness campaigns. Her individual battle had exposed a societal vulnerability and had forced people in power to pay attention and take action. Today, when you walk through that Lahore alley, you will still hear the hum of a sewing machine from Saima's workshop. But now, it blends with the sounds of laughter and conversation from the women she mentors. Zara is excelling in her studies, her future bright and full of promise, a testament to her mother's incredible resilience. Saima's journey teaches us a profound truth, that adversity, no matter how devastating, can be overcome. It shows that the strength of one woman, when amplified by the support of a community, can move mountains, fight injustice, and build a new, more hopeful world from the ashes of despair.